We'll go on now in regards to the topic, which is Ein Eid Milvado. How do we get in from Pesach Sheni to Ein Eid Milvado? So basically, when a person jumps out from their own limitations, which is the lesson of Passover, Pesach, Upasach Hashem, they break out of their own framework. So that is when a person realizes that the essence of the world is basically the Almighty and godliness, and His revelation, which is godliness. So we'll discuss, firstly, how Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi explains it in Tanya, in the second section of Tanya, which he intended that should be the first part of the Tanya, and later he changed it should be the second section of Tanya. Explains it in a philosophical way, very deep level, the expression of the oneness of the Almighty everywhere, and he bases it on the verse which we actually say 3 times a day. That you should be knowledgeable, you should bring it down to your heart, that the Almighty is the God. The God Bashamayim Mimal, in the higher worlds and in the lower worlds, and nothing else. We'll discuss further also what's the difference between Ein Eid and Ein Eid Milvado. In Chassidus there's a lot discussing the two inyanim. And Ein Eid Milvado is actually a deeper understanding of the Almighty, the godliness permeating everything in the world. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that there's basically in concept, in Chassidus and Kabbalah, there's 2 concepts. One is called Yechudei Ilah, one is called Yechudei Tato. Yechudei Ilah means expressing the oneness of the Almighty on a higher level. Ilah means on the higher level. Tato means on a lower level. And basically how the Alter Rebbe explains it is that there are 2 names that represent the relationship that the Almighty has with the world. There's one name, how He relates to the world, and that is basically the name which is written Aleph Daled Nun Yud. When we write it, we usually write a dash between one of the letters, not to write it out completely. It's one of the 7 sacred names, which means master. The second name is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4-letter name, which is the most unique name from all the 7 names. What is the difference between the 2 names? There's the relationship, how the Almighty relates to the world as a master. So then He's referred to Odin. He's referred to Aleph Daled Nun Yud. He is referred to the master. As it says that in the Medrash it says that when I think it was Adam Rishon referred to the Almighty, he says it says when He brought all the animals to name all the animals, so it says Adam Rishon, Adam gave them all names. When it came to, so then the Almighty said, and what's my name? He says, your name is Odin, you're the master of everything. So basically, when we're relating to creation, the name Odin is the name that's used. When we are relating to supernatural conduct, which is basically miracles, so that is the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because Yud Kei Vav Kei stands for 3 different tenses: the past, the present, and the future. Hashem Melech, Hashem Molech, Hashem Yimlech, which is the present, the past, and the future. And then also Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hoya Heva V'Yiyah. He was, He is, and He will be. So this shows higher than time. So this is basically the Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the Alter Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe explains how there's a combination between these 2 names and the result from the combinations. There's 2 different combinations. There's one combination that one is intertwined and vested in the other. For example, when Shem Yud Kei, let's do the higher one first. When Shem Adne, which means as he relates to the world, is intertwined and vested into the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, so what stands out then? The Yud Kei Vav Kei. What we see is only a miraculous conduct. We don't see nature because it is the part of nature, the source for nature. The relationship to nature is basically intertwined and vested into something higher. So therefore it does not stand out. On the other hand, the Almighty wants there should be a world, and a world with a structure as we see it. So this is basically because the Shem Yudke Vavke is intertwined and vested in the second name, which is Shem Adna. So therefore what stands out, the prime revelation, the prime the prime name that is on the agenda is basically the name relating to world, as world finds itself in a structure and a framework of time and space. And this is basically the difference between Yechudei Ilah and Yechudei Tatorah. There is a level where world stands in a state of nullification. Higher worlds stand in a state of nullification that they do not completely relate to world. It is completely intertwined in the highest name of the Almighty, how He conducts miracles, how it is higher than world. The word miracle in Hebrew means nes, uplifted, beyond world, beyond the structure of world. Teva, nature, means sunk in. This is when godliness is sunk in, not revealed, hidden, concealed. So this is basically depending what name is the prime name. If it is Yechudei Ilah, higher level in nullification, then it is the Shem Yudke Vavke is the prime name. When there is Yechudei Tatorah, which means a lower level of nullification, a lower state of nullification, then it is because it is based on Shem Adna, which is that the Almighty is the master, but therefore there's a world, so therefore it's not an ultimate state of nullification, because the purpose is there should be a world. Speaking about the union of Bittul, state of nullification, there are many different levels of nullification. I'll mention two which are mentioned very often in Chassidus. One is called Bittul HaYesh, one is called Bittul HaMetzius. Bittul HaYesh means that a person is mevatel, nullifies the arrogance, the strength of the person, but the person still remains an entity. Bittul HaMetzius means that the person is completely does not feel as an entity for himself. What is the example for that? An interesting example. A person is standing in the street, and he gets a message, the king wants to see him. So the first thing is, he loses his composure to a certain extent, and he wants to make sure to get to the king immediately. But if a person asks him something which does not demand time, does not demand depth, he'll be able to relate to the person. But his mind is functioning, getting to the king. Once he comes to the king, he reaches a higher state of bittul. He's speechless. He's standing for the king. He lost his entity completely. And this is basically like the silent prayer that we say every day. Before the silent prayer, we say a verse. Hashem svasai tiftach ufi yagit ilasecha. Open up my lips and my words will drip out. So it says, why by Shemoneh Esrei, the silent prayer? Why not in the beginning? Because this is the highest level. As we'll mention further, the different worlds that take place during our prayer, the different levels of worlds. And every section of the prayer reflects a different level, a different world. So when it comes to the silent prayer, it is the world of Atzilus. For some of you that are familiar with that word, Atzilus is basically a total state of nullification, ultimate nullification. There are no angels there, because even an angel would not be able to endure and deal with such a state of nullification. Therefore, when we stand Shemoneh Esrei, we are standing for our master, as it's mentioned, the code of the Jewish law, that when a person prays, they are standing in front of the master. They cannot signal, they cannot do anything. So then, it is in a state of speechless. A person is, Hashem svasai tiftach, open up my lips, ufi yagit ilasecha, my mouth will just channel out whatever you're giving me. So this is basically taking the considered Bittul HaMetzius, completely, lost the entity completely, just standing for the king in a state of, finding themselves speechless. This is the difference between Bittul HaYesh and Bittul HaMetzius. Bittul HaYesh is just thinning out, polishing up, refining oneself, but not an ultimate state of nullification. Bittul HaMetzius means the core of the person is completely touched, and completely lost in front of a superior being. In regards to the seasons of the year, there are Yomim Tevim, holidays a year, which they express the commitment that we commit ourselves to the Almighty. Namely, Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the time that we anoint the Almighty for a king. The Talmud tells us in Rosh Hashanah, in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, Imru lefanai malchiyos. The Talmud says that the Almighty says, say for me verses of royalty in order to anoint me as a king over you. The Almighty is asking the Jewish nation every year to say verses of royalty, voices of shofar, voices of remembering. This is by the way, the long prayer that we say Rosh Hashanah, the Musaf, that they blow shofar in the middle of the silent prayer, in the middle of the loud prayer when the cantor repeats it. This is where all these verses are. What does it mean, Kabbalah? What does it mean by a person? It means that a person commits themselves completely to the Almighty. When a person wants to anoint someone over them, it is a commitment. It is not just an employer and an employee contract. It is a commitment to the king. Completely given over to the king. And becomes, in a sense, the king's property. Melech Shmei Nikra Aleim. It's the name of the country. It's the king. It's under the king himself. This is basically called Kabbalah Se'amach HaShamayim, taking upon oneself the yoke of the Almighty, of the Almighty's kingdom. Although it's once a year, but it actually is reflected every day in the year. And that is when we say Meidani. When we say Meidani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim, we are again from anew committing our devotion, our loyalty to the Almighty. And it is we didn't even wash our hands. We're not even saying and not mentioning even the Almighty's name. We are referring to Him as Melech, the King. Once this is the Rosh Hashanah every day. This is the total commitment for the day. And it begins in the beginning of the day, which is when the person opens up their eyes. The same way that you have every day the blessings that we say for the Torah. We say it every morning in the prayers. That is considered the Matan Torah of the day. This is when Torah is given every day. We say it Neisen HaTorah. Neisen HaTorah means present tense. He is giving Torah, not that he gave Torah. Mm-hmm. So this is basically being repeated every day. Leaving Egypt is the reading of the Shema every day. When we conclude the Shema, what do we say? Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hitzeichi eschem eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of Egypt. And that's why there's an obligation to say it also at night. Although that portion is basically refers to the tzitzis, the fringes which are worn, which the obligation is in the daytime. But because it says leaving Egypt, we mention it at night. Because we're obligated to mention the leaving, the exile of Egypt twice a day. So this is basically a personal experience that a person has every day. Rosh Hashanah, with the commitment in the beginning of the day, the Meidan Lefanecha, thanking, committing oneself to the Almighty. Then comes the Neisen HaTorah, giving Torah. There is the giving of the Torah every day. And then comes Yetzias Mitzrayim, although the order chronologically is different, but basically, in order that a person should reach going out of Egypt, they have to go through a certain prayer, meditation. Then it becomes part of them. So that's when a person could reach Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, and then come to the end of Krishna, which is Yetzias Mitzrayim. We're approaching the Yom Tov of Shavuos, which is coming up in a few weeks. The Yom Tov of Shavuos also has this concept. When the Jews were standing by Mount Sinai, they said, Nasa v'nishma. We will do, and we will, literal meaning is we will hear. But basically, as Chassidus explains, we will do and then we'll understand. V'nishma will understand. Which means basically that it was a commitment that before we even knew what to do, we already committed ourselves. So Chassidus explains, this already from Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi, discusses it and explains it, that there's two different states of nullification. There's a nullification in Hebrew it's called lebal haratzon. I'll explain it. And there's a nullification, bittul lebal haratzon, bittul leharatzon. When a person, for example, bittul haratzon means a state of nullification to the commandment of the Almighty. Specific commandment, fulfilling the commandment, committing oneself to fulfill it in its utmost. Bittul lebal haratzon means committing oneself to the king himself, to the one that commanded us, not just to the commandment. What is the difference? When a person commits themselves to a certain commandment, it is basically committing oneself to the desire of the Almighty, that He wanted this and this commandment fulfilled. For example, eating matzah, putting on tefillin. Basically, it's an individual mitzvah, which is individual will and desire, commandment from the Almighty. And they know before what it is. Person knows what matzah is, what tefillin are, other mitzvahs. So therefore, there is a commitment, but it's to a certain extent. It doesn't take out the utmost of the person. It doesn't touch the person to the core. He'll do the mitzvah and he's done. When a person commits oneself to the king, they commit their utmost to the king. And whatever the king will utter, whatever the king will order and command, they're ready to do, even before they know what he'll ask them to do. This is a deeper commandment. This is a deeper commitment. This is an ultimate commitment, which a person is completely, his whole soul is involved in this. This is not just a commitment for a certain individual commandment. So Chassidus explains this is what happened by Mount Sinai. The Jewish nation said, Nasa v'nishma. They said, we'll do, we'll understand. And they said, the doing before the understanding. This marked the total commitment of bittul lebal haratzon, committing oneself completely to the one who has commanded. As the Rab Shneur Zalman of Liadi says, that when it comes to mitzvahs, it is not what the commandment is. Understood that we have to know what the commandment is to know what to do, but it is who commanded us. That's why when we make the blessing for a commandment, there's two sections to it. The Rashba also brings it in one of the responses, Rab Shlomo ben Aderas, that there is the first part of the blessing is Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam, the master of the world, that has given us, the king of the world, that has given us, commanded us, Asher Kiddishana b'mitzvahs, have commanded us, has sanctified us with his commandments. Then comes the name of the mitzvah that we're doing. La'niach tefillin, achilas matzah, different commandments. So every bracha has in itself two things. We have to remember whose commandment it is and what the commandment is. So the Alter Rebbe brings Rab Shneur Zalman of Liadi. I think later